Hello, hello. Welcome to my channel. I'm Dallisa Hocking, a fifth generation psychic medium. I love interviewing really interesting people, and Virginia Rosenberg is no exception. I am so delighted to welcome you to the channel. So, Virginia, before we get started, I'm going to tell people a little bit about you. Virginia Rosenberg is an intuitive astrologer based in Western North Carolina. Her mystical yet rooted writings have made her a household name. She wields astrology as a healing art, a navigation system, and a spiritual form of time travel. Virginia is the founder of Sky Scholar, an immersive astrology school where students weave together through their shared love of wisdom keeping and way finding. I love that. Her annual cosmic calendar and forecast reach an international audience and devoted to living with harmony as with the greater whole. And you can learn more about Virginia's work at virginiarosenberg.com. So, Virginia, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I was digging through your website. I recommend everyone do it because as I was reading through your writing, it's like, wow, you really have a way with words. And I haven't quite heard energy work, astrology, wayfinding put in the way that I did when I was looking through it. So I think it's worth a read for sure. You mentioned that your work is eco-psychological. I have never heard of that before. And I've interviewed a lot of astrologers and energy practitioners and healers. What is that? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So to me, astrology is a study of nature because we're observing and working with natural forces. And while they're not exactly the same forces that we can smell and touch and see right in front of us, like the waters, the stones, the dirt, the trees, if we zoom out into the wider lens and the bigger picture, the planets, the heavenly bodies, the stars, and the cosmos are simply an extension of nature and a reflection of nature as it is that we experience in the material realm down here on the earth plane. So, the supposition with eco-psychological astrology is that there is psyche, there is consciousness that is present in all of nature. So just like trees are conscious beings, rocks have a consciousness to them. So too do the stars and the planets and all of the heavenly bodies, named and unnamed. And astrology, as I see it and as I teach it and practice it, is a conversation and a communion with those intelligences of nature that exist within these beings and these planes that these beings represent.
Oh, that gives me the chills. I think that that's really going to resonate with a lot of individuals that are listening to you speak about it. I've never heard it put that way, but I've imagined and sensed as a psychic medium that is real and is that connection. That it's not just an individual sitting on a planet that isn't connected to anything else. There's such a fabric of energy between us and, as you were saying, nature and the solar system, the planets. So if somebody's listening to you talk about this right now and they're like, well, I've put that way before. Like, is there something that you would say to like a beginner that's like, whoa, yeah, I do feel that extension, but how do I tap into more of that connectivity? Is there something that you would tell folks of like a maybe a simpler or easy place to start from?
Hmm. Well, I think that there's a way in which we can experience that in the 3D manifest world, going into nature, sitting by water, clearing your mind, and just allowing yourself to receive messages, feelings, memories, whatever is sparked by that experience. Or going to a tree and putting your hand on it and saying hello to the tree, sending it some love, and just starting in this very basic way to have a physical relationship with these natural beings around us. And when it comes to astrology, I often point to the very basic fact that the moon causes the tides, and that, as far as we know scientifically, currently we're made of 80% water, I think, up to 80% in our bodies, our brains, etc. And so that effect that the moon has on the tides of the ocean also has an effect on our own bodies and our own beings because we're not separate from our bodies. Our bodies are housing our spirit and all of our beingness. So, yeah, just starting with that simple relationship with the moon and also with the sun, the recognition, I think circadian health is like coming more into public awareness and the recognition of how tied our well-being is to the sun and how much it actually directs our energy levels, our daily behavior, and going, I think, beyond the sun, although the sun is the most sort of easily trackable light source that has a direct impact on us. But there's more and more research coming out that shows that we are very sensitive to light, and that light is part of our nutrition. And so the forms and the types of light that we expose ourselves to certainly impact how we're feeling, how we're thinking, how we're doing our overall health. And so one of the things my students do in Sky Scholar is we have a dedicated practice of relating with the sun throughout the day. So observing sunrise every day for 2 weeks, for example, and sunset every day, and just noticing how we're feeling when that's occurring, and also observing noon every day, and just getting more acquainted with that solar arc and how it corresponds to our own embodied experience. And just it's that simple. I think astrology for a lot of people seems really out there, but the reason I love tropical Western astrology especially is because it's tied to the Earth-Sun relationship, and that's a very visceral, embodied experience of our relationship with the sun and the seasons and the Earth's turnings and the Earth's expressions as responding to the type of interfacing with the sun that's going on throughout the year. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love those watching this episode to drop a comment and let us know, how are you connecting with maybe the sun, the moon, something in nature that is around your own surroundings. I used to live on the waterfront in Washington State, and it was absolutely stunning. And I love and I miss those walks along the pathway where I could see the water and see the birds and the critters that lived in that space. And so I completely understand what you're talking about. And I think connecting, as you said, with that around us, and then also bringing in the moon cycles and the sun and observing it, I think are great places for people to start. So I appreciate that. Okay, so we need to talk about how you found astrologer, or how astrology found you. So you're quoted as saying, "Astrology is an ancient symbolic language I spontaneously remember and work to reclaim." I love that so much. As somebody like myself that gets downloads and channelings, and when I read that, and as I said, Virginia's great with words, that I was like, wow, yes, I feel like it's this language, this ancient language that's already inside of us or already a part of us that we're awakening to. So, how did you come about learning or finding astrology?
It feels like so long ago now because it's just always been there. I mean, when I was 11, I think my first poem was published in a children's poetry book, and it was about the sky and sort of this war that I saw occurring in the sky. It was based on a walk that I took in my neighborhood, and I looked up and there was this super dark cloud over half the sky, and the other half of the sky was bright blue and untouched by the clouds. So it inspired this revelation in this poem. So I mean, it's always been there. It's always been in me. I remember my mom got me like an astrology interpretation printout for my 13th birthday of my own chart. But it wasn't until I was around age 20 that I started to take astrology more seriously. And it was because I met a dearly beloved partner who was an astrologer, and he sort of showed me, didn't really show me the ropes, but started to attune me to astrology in a different way where he wouldn't tell me kind of what this meant, what Aries is and what Mercury stands for. He would just hold up a chart and ask me what it made me feel and what it made me think and sort of what it evoked. And so that was my initiation into remembering astrology rather than learning astrology, recognizing that some part of me already had it inside, some part of me already knew it, and that I was simply remembering it and putting language to that inner knowledge that already existed. So that was the beginning. And then from there, that when that relationship ended, I was in a lot of grief and looking for direction. So I sort of became obsessed with teaching myself the complexities of astrology as a way to heal and to orient. So this is why I think astrology is a healing art, is because it is so orienting. It's so contextualizing to our life experience in a way that is very difficult to access and find. I grew up wondering why the world was the way it was. It didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense that we had like air conditioning on in the summer. Like I just wanted to live outside. I wanted to have the windows open at all times. I didn't understand why people were like hanging out at the mall and just what the holidays were, all the gift giving at Christmas. None of it made any sense to me because I wasn't certain about the meaning. I didn't grow up in like a religious household or anything like that. And it just felt like a very materialist culture around me that, again, just didn't have meaning to it and didn't make sense. And we've lost a lot culturally of rites of passage, and things that serve to help orient us more in a spiritual way, and a way of us understanding what each like life chapter is supposed to be about. I feel like as we're living into our lives, we're kind of stumbling upon the life chapters and figuring it out as we go, when astrology actually provides a map and a cosmic context to that. There are these predictable rhythmic cycles that the planets make that initiate us in different ways. So so anyway, it just sort of snowballed from there. I became very interested, and then it kind of got unlocked and people started asking me to do readings, and it was really a feeling of like following a trail of breadcrumbs that I had left for myself many lifetimes before.
I love that so much. And I appreciate the example you shared with us where your partner would hold up the chart and say, what are you intuitively getting from this? I've found through teaching so many different classes on the psychic mediumship side that a lot of people get in their head and they want to know, like, what's the checklist? What are the things I have to do this right? And I often just say, set the intention that you can do it and get the heck out of the way. That's basically, but I love that you started off just looking at it intuitively and getting that feel for it, because that really is, I think, that superpower we all have inside of us of, our intuition, and we can keep strengthening that. So I love that example. And I would encourage anyone interested in astrology to try that and see what you
Mhm.
get. And yeah, fascinating. There's all sorts of people that listen to this show, and a lot of them love astrology, but they're, in different phases of where they're at in learning,
Mhm.
on their journey. Some are very familiar with their personal chart. So this might be a loaded question, but what do you think if somebody was looking at their own chart today I know you talked about the importance of the moon, and we can all find where the moon was in our own chart when we were born. Is that one of the most important things that you would tell someone, maybe as a beginner, looking at their own chart to look for? Or is there something like a signature that you like people to look at in their own chart when they're getting started?
It is a little bit of a loaded question because you really need to understand more of the whole to get a grounded sense of what's there in the chart. There, I can't tell you how many times I've heard over the years, like, I know I'm a whatever Sagittarius, but I don't feel like I connect to that archetype at all. I don't feel like that's me. And a skilled astrologer could open up that chart and look at it and say, well, you've got Saturn conjunct your sun and it's in the 12th house and you have a stellium of planets in Scorpio. So like your Sagittarius is like not the focus here at all, even though that is your sun sign. And there's these deeper meanings that are indicated by a chart like that. So I would actually zoom out even further and not even just say, well, look at your sun, moon, and rising, of course, which is like what most astrologers would say, like, those are your big three, your sun, moon, and rising. And they are very important and very significant. But you can zoom out even further and just glance at the picture of your chart as a whole and practice it from that very intuitive space as we discussed, which is like just looking at this shape, looking at this image, which is a map of the sky at the precise moment that you were born in relationship to where you were on Earth at that moment when you emerged and took your first breath. That's what a birth chart is. It's a literal map. It's not figurative. It's not metaphoric. It's a concrete map of the coordinates of the planets at that moment. But when you look at that shape, how does it make you feel? Where is your eye drawn? And maybe your eye is drawn to Mars because it's the only planet at the top of the chart, and then there's something there for you. So then learn about Mars and the sign that it's in, if that's where your eye goes. So that's what I would say is it's very case by case. And that could also be a message that's just meant for you in that particular moment in time. And then you could gaze at your chart a week later and you could be pulled somewhere else. And this is where it's like there is a divination aspect to working with astrology, right? Where you could work, for example, with the same tarot deck over and over, and maybe you're getting, the same two cards for a year, and then the focus changes, and there's a different theme, there's a different archetype, there's a different message that's pulling you because you're evolving and you're changing into a new point of focus. Astrology works the same way. And like I've looked at my chart so often, obviously, because I've been doing astrology so much, but you keep living into it as as you go, and it's just like a flower that's blooming and showing different parts of itself. Or like a garden that you've had, like you have a new and different garden every single year, so the chart functions like that. It's a reflection tool of consciousness, and it can point you where you need to look at any given moment in time. And even if it's the same point you're being drawn to 15 years later, that point could have a very different message then that it does for you now.
Beautiful. Yeah, I remember even looking at my own chart in the very, very beginning, and I'm like, why is this moon like all the way up here by itself? And so
Yeah.
you describing that makes complete sense to me. And I think you're really giving all of us that reminder of like taking that zoom out, like you said, and looking at it from maybe that 30,000 foot level and notice where you have maybe those stelliums or more planets that are clustered together in the chart, or do you have a whole section of the chart that doesn't have anything there? And yeah, I love that viewpoint. I don't think we have to necessarily follow a formula all the time, and we can
Yeah.
trust our intuition, what it's telling us, and what our chart is really revealing to us. So I love
Mhm.
that. Oh my gosh, so many good tips already. Thanks, Virginia. I think we should probably talk now about 2025. So here we are at the end of the year, and whoo, a lot has happened. I've had a lot of astrology discussions with different astrologers this year and done a lot of channeling myself, and it's one for the history books. So when you think of 2025 and the year that we have traveled through, and you think about it intuitively and you think about it through the astrology that happened, what do you make of it? Like, what do you think of it now that we're at the end of the year?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, my sense as an astrologer with this year is it's a transitional year. And that's, to me, that's the biggest feature of the purpose of this year and just what's transpiring, what's going on this year. It's transitional and it's leading towards something conclusive in terms of that transition. I think that we can all sense on a collective scale that we've been involved in transition for at least the last 5 years in a very acute way. And so I almost feel like I've been a broken record talking about this old paradigm that is coming to a close, that is completing, it's becoming obsolete. And this year is the end of that occurring, the end of that sort of crumbling, that washing away of I think, a kind of existence that we're very familiar with and we're very like entrained to. And 2026 is a new reality that's emerging and it's started to seed in this year. So that's why to me it feels very transitional because it's been a liminal space where we've been sort of kind of one foot in the old, one foot in the new. And as we record this in November, it just feels so mysterious this time that we're in. I feel it's very palpable that no one is certain what will happen next or where we're going. There's this pervasive sense of uncertainty that's sort of clinging and hanging in the air. But I think many of us do feel quite clearly that we can't go back to where we came from and that the habituations that have been working for us, the mechanics that have been kind of like running like cogs in a wheel, it's like there's a wrench in that system now and it's broken and we if we keep trying to do it that way, it's not going to work. Like we're not it's not going to get us anywhere because it's not a frequency, it's not a match for where it is that we're going. So that's my sense personally of 2025 and the name for, in the calendar because I do a yearly divination, I do a forecast, I publish a calendar every year, so I study the planetary movements of every single day and I get really really nerdy with it. But the name of my calendar for 2025 was immersion. And the feeling has really been about a kind of a baptism of sorts. And it's felt to me like swimming in the soup of all that came before, and maybe even being in um, that fluid. Like before anything existed, it was water, it was fluid. And there's the fluid inside the womb that we gestate in. It's the water that breaks before the emergence of new life. And so that to me is the feeling of 2025.
Ooh, give me chills again. So when you mentioned immersion and being like a baptism, I chills through my whole body. I understand that and I feel that deeply. And I think a lot of the viewers may also recognize how they may have felt baptized at some point in this year. And also feeling that in between space that you had mentioned, where 2025 is like this bridge. And now we're going to be heading into a whole new frequency. Uh, Spirit has said numerous times that everything is in the process of dismantling and
Mhm.
that we are going to be rebirthing together the new reality.
Mhm.
And the sense of community will even shift and get stronger in the way that we communicate with our consciousness, and our
Yeah.
energy is going to change as well. So, yeah, it's like this whole new horizon. And in some ways, kind of like a wild, wild west. But here we are, I believe we chose to incarnate right now, and we're here for a reason. Um, and so you dropped a lot of, I'll use your word, breadcrumbs, in what you just said about 2025 and then going into like 26 and forward. And so as you think about, I know you put together your calendar, and I've got all that information in the description below. You put it together for 26 as well.
Mhm.
So you've sat with everything for 26. What is the feeling you're getting as we get ready to embark on this new calendar year?
It's funny, I used Wild West in my calendar as like part of the where I feel like we are. And another phrase I have in there is we're in a halo of history in the making. Because when you ask me that question and I think about 2026 and I tune into that, I really feel this halo or aura kind of coming off of Earth, emanating from Earth. It's almost like something got turned on, something gets turned on in 2026, and it absolutely shifts the frequency and the trajectory of the planet. There's so many things that I feel, but the name for 2026, the calendar, is convergence. And it's descriptive of a planetary occurrence. So all the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are going to be aspecting each other in a exact formation at early degrees of new signs because Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn all transitioned into new signs, primarily in this year, 2025, but now they're back. They're like completing the previous stories now, before we move into 2026, and it's 2026 when they all move back into their new signs. So we're in like a clearing out, cleaning up, kind of going backtracking into the past in the end of 2025. But so they form these exact relationships to one another, all of those planets within a 10-day span in July 2026. It's like, I've never seen anything like it, and no astrologer alive today has seen anything like it because this is exceedingly rare, astronomical um, occurrence. So I thought about naming it harmonic convergence, but then that was associated with like an event in the 80s and some sort of festival, so I didn't use that. But the other word that came to me for 2026 that I considered was congregation. And I really love both of those. I feel like they're both at work, convergence and congregation. And I feel that such a big theme we're going to be living into that I'm really curious about how it'll unfold and how it'll populate is the dynamic between the individual and the collective. That's going to be enormous and huge. And individual reality versus maybe objective truth or like objective collective reality, and what each individual person's role is in helping the collective reach a critical mass and make a transition of consciousness that's necessitated by the times.
That is a lot.
Yeah. And
The
that's just
Gemini,
scratching the surface of
yeah,
2026.
I'm a Gemini rising. And for me to be like, what do I say next? It's pretty rare. But yeah, convergence and congregation. I love what you just said about the community and the role of the individual and the groups or the place in which we live, because I too have been getting that through a lot of my channelings. And part of what I've been feeling is that our local community and the people that we are a part of, whether it's family or family that we have selected or brought into our life on our own, that those are going to be a top priority in 26. And what I'm even hearing as I say this from spirit is our life is much easier and in flow more based on the level of connectivity that we have with other people around us. And yeah, it's like what are we going to need and what are they going to need and how does that meet in the middle? Yeah, it's going to be wild. I know that word keeps coming in wild, but maybe that's just a foreshadowing of what the temperature of 2026 is going to be. And I've talked to a lot of astrologers over the years, and I'll often ask, like, okay, here we are, we're going into a new year. What do you think is going to happen? And a lot of the astrologers will say, well, it kind of depends on you and your life. There's, the collective energies and the things that, are gracing Earth as we move through the year. But just like 2020, there are some people that thought it was a really bad year and had, very difficult hardships during that time. And in that same period of time, there are people that when you ask them how it was, they're like, it was the most amazing time that I've ever had in my whole life. And so I think individual experience is part of that as well, and how you're working with the energies or how it's affecting your own personal chart. When you think of 2026, because I know a lot of people are sitting in question and wondering, like, is it going to be as hard as 2025? Are we going to have a lot of setbacks or challenges? And oftentimes people will point to the politics in the United States and frankly in other countries.
Mhm.
Can you put like a signature on 2026 of what you think the temperature might be? Do you think it'll be the same kind of major shifts and pivots that we've seen in 25 because there's so much newness coming in? And some people love new things and new ways of being, and others don't. So, is there anything else you want to add about what you think 26, the flavor will be?
Yeah, I mean, the phrase that's coming to me is radical reorientation.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
I would say these are the most significant en masse planetary alignments since the ones in 2020 that astrologers were seeing and did watch, as it was approaching. But the nature of these alignments is not similar to 2020. And so I think in part, it really comes down to each individual's ability and willingness to adapt, to be flexible, to be willing to change, to be willing to let go of what's become comfortable, familiar, habitual. It's like that. There is an old operating system that is falling out of favor. And for me, it does have a feeling. I do feel myself almost like feeling nervous and grasping. But I think that's a very normal and natural human response to major change. And I'm not going to pretend that we're not going to see major change. We are going to see incredible levels of change, probably unlike what we've seen up until this point. I think a lot of that change is connected to the technological renaissance that we're living through. And like you said, with politics and governments and turmoil in the US and all over the world, I mean, never before in my lifetime have I seen headlines rolling out month after month saying Germany's government collapsed, France's government collapsed, Canada's government collapsed, Indonesia riots. It's like this turmoil and this upheaval is global and it's already going on. And so part of the question for me in that is what is worth taking with us? And like my sense is that we're in a creative void. When the familiar and the comfortable falls away and the structures that have been fall away, what really matters is not necessarily what is gone. What matters is, well, who takes the reins and has the initiative and holds the directive to begin the next thing. So I think there's actually enormous opportunity for us to experience our power as co-creators of reality like never before. But I also think that that depends on our capacity, our ability, and our willingness to stand up for what it is that's important to us, and to stand in ourselves in that. And I think the challenge to that is that there's going to be confusion about who we are. Because as the old kind of order, as the old world ebbs away, where we oriented ourselves and found a sense of identity, we'll kind of lose that, and we'll need to rediscover our identity as it is now, coming through us through vital life force, not as attached to like a former caricature or character that we played or portrayed. So yeah, I have a lot more thoughts. I'm very in depth with these themes because I study them so much and at such length, but I don't want to overload you, so that's a starting point.
Yeah, and I know folks that are watching this will want to look at your work and your socials and what you're sharing, and of course your forecast and your cosmic calendar that you put out. So, no, it's really helpful to hear it from your perspective. So, while you were speaking, Spirit was reminding me of a vision they gave me a few years ago, and they said that we would be more in a frequency of like grassroots
Mhm.
community initiatives where it felt very much like moving away from what we have as a political system now,
Mhm.
and that it wouldn't feel as much as elected officials, even in our local communities, but instead to be your neighbor, the person you go to school with, that are like, we're getting together and we're going to do this and we're going to activate the change and that rebirth.
Yeah.
So yeah, that matches the astrology. So you've given us the 2026. Um, I don't know if you've looked further out than that, but I can hear my audience already being like, well, when is it going to get better? Right. And that's, again, kind of back to the individual's perspective and what's going on in your life and how you choose to see those silver linings. There's a lot of variables in there, but have you looked far enough out into the future where you start to feel like there is um, this, maybe we've adopted more of the technology and the AI, and we just feel like we can rest a little bit or feel a little bit more comfortable in our new lives? Is there like a point in time where you're maybe circling it or thinking about it for that?
I don't know, honestly. I haven't like considered it from that angle. I mean, I've been so immersed in the 2026 astrology that there hasn't been room for that for me. But I also feel very much, I like to take things more incrementally because I share your perspective that the future is never set in stone. It is dependent upon so many variables, one of the biggest ones being our own consciousness, our free will, our choices, and what I like to call just the divine mystery of love. That to me is the utmost. Um, locus or focal point or nexus through which the future is forged and born. So yeah, and it's almost like not worthwhile, I think, and just in my own worldview to be like, oh, well, are we gonna get like some reprieve in 2033 or whatever, because it's like staying focused on the task at hand. And and with that question too that you mentioned of like, well, when do we get a break or when do things get better? I mean, my question back would be, well, what does that mean to you? What does it mean for you? What does it mean to you of things getting better? Because that's exactly what I'm talking about, that with all of this obsolescent paradigm falling, crumbling, disappearing, going away, we have this opportunity to really point out, like, you know what? I didn't want to do all these things in life anyway. Like, this is what's really important to me. And this is what I want to put my focus on. And this is what I want to hand down to the next generation. And this is what I want to see happening in my local environment. And that's very much a theme, honestly, of the 2026 astrology is that no one is coming to save us. Like, we are the ones that are the saviors. We are the ones that are showing up and enacting the change. And people are in different phases of life as well. So like that doesn't mean that everyone is on the front lines of that or that everyone is founding a new micro school or what have you. It's like some people, each person has to play their individual role, and some people will be recipients of care, and that is perfect. Everyone has to be in their unique expression of the formation of the divine design that's operating through our humanity. So I want to say both of those things. I want to say that piece of no one is coming to save us. And I want to say in a future with an emphasis on community care, like your neighbor maybe will come to save you, like actually, and maybe another day you'll be there to save and support your neighbor. And this relocalization and this re-emphasis, as you're speaking of, on community ties, tribal ties. Um, yeah, I'm not even sure what to say about it. I mean, something else for some reason that wants to be spoken is that you alluded to earlier is like the capacity of our communication to change and our ability to read energy fields. Like we're already becoming more telepathic, whether or not listeners or people outside of this are aware of that, it's happening. And that actually is part of why this old paradigm is unable to function now because the tricks don't work anymore. The illusions and the glamours don't work anymore. We're moving into something that is much more honest, much more authentic, and much more reflective, I think, of our core nature. Than what we've been able to experience in maybe our whole lives because of the kind of paradigm that has kind of had its hold on our life force.
Oh, wow. You give us so much to think about. And I love that you are encouraging us to go back to ourselves and, what would make us happy. And maybe that isn't all of the things or all of the systems that we've had in place, or maybe it's the job that we just really don't like, but we keep showing up anyway because we feel like we have to. So where
Yeah.
are we trapped in our own box or our own old system that either we created or someone else created? And this feels like actually an opportunity for freeing ourselves and for liberation.
Yeah.
And I think how we choose to see, uh, you know, the end of this year, next year, and as the days unfold, how we choose to see it is really going to be a huge part of how we move through the energy and the pathway forward. Yeah. Um, so as we start to wind down, as people are listening to this today and hearing everything and how you've put it, which has been really beautifully spoken, is there something that you would want to tell them or something you could suggest to them if they're like, okay, well, I just heard that we're moving into this radical, wild time. What would be something that you would say to them, either words of encouragement or something that they could try that might help them ride this wave with a little bit more ease?
Mm, yeah. Hmm. There's a few things that are popping up. One is like it's okay to change. It's okay to let go. And I'm just reflecting on all the things you just said, kind of in my own life and in my own world, and what I've been struggling with, and where I feel myself gripping to behaviors and ways of being that, like, don't, the life force isn't there, you know? And yet, and I'm trying to like force myself into that shape, even though there's nothing left there and I don't even want to do it. And so I'm thinking to myself about that. And, what I need to hear is like permission to go where the energy is, permission to find that flame and to follow it and to nurture it and to stoke it, and permission to create, and permission to be surprised through your own creative process. I just, I have this feeling that when we allow ourselves to let go of and depart from this kind of old dead paradigm, and when we allow ourselves to point towards where the life is, we'll have everything that we need. And it's just going to grow and multiply. And the more each individual orients in that direction, the more energy everyone gets to orient in that direction. And it's like we can all move this thing actually instantaneously. It's just a matter of critical mass orienting towards life force and love and generative capacity and creation. So that might be kind of like meta, but on a very micro scale, it feels like just really paying attention to the tiny little spark of light that you do feel and that you want to invite it to grow, and letting yourself do that in whatever way that you're able.
Such beautiful words to leave us with today. Yeah, it's that question, like you said, of where is their life force, where is their energy in my life, and where is it absent? And am I going to allow myself and give permission for me to focus more on where the joy and the life force energy is? And I would love to hear in the comments from everyone watching, what is something about your life that you feel a lot of joy about? Where are you feeling that life force, joyful energy in your own life? I'd love to hear. I read every comment, and it's really wonderful to be able to connect with people and hear from people all over the world. And Virginia Rosenberg, you're amazing. I want to remind people that your cosmic calendar and your year ahead forecast, I have that link in the description below and a special code. So make sure you use that when you make your purchase and supporting Virginia's work. And remember that you can learn more about Virginia on her website, virginiarosenberg.com. I have that linked below. And if you're interested in learning anything about my work as a fifth generation psychic medium, I'm at spiritandspark.com. Thank you, Virginia. I appreciate your time and your talent today.
Thank you, Dallisa. I really enjoyed this.
Beautiful.